Hello, good afternoon, everyone. You are watching exclusive interest series on the topic of reflection on the status of minority women in Nepal, organized by SARIM. I am your host, Purkho Bheel, and today we have very well-known personality with us, Miss Sajhana Tolange. Sajhana Tolange is working as a program officer at Forum for Nation Building Nepal, an NGO that works to support to access social justice for marginalized communities. She is active in writing for media, research, and development work to support by raising voice for marginalized communities. She is also doing research on gender and political participation from critical perspective. Recently, she presented her finding on the political participation and representation of Dalits in Nepal. She has 9 years professional experience, including media, research, and development. So, Ms. Sajani ji, I am pleased to have you as our guest. I hope this discussion will going quite informative. So, thank you for your time and efforts.
Thank you, Purkho. And namaste and good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me. And I would also like to thank South Asia Research Institute for Minorities team for providing me and this very great opportunity to speak about the status of I think I'm talking about minority group represents so many categories, but then I think I will mostly focus my talk on Dalit women in Nepal. Thank you, Purkho, for having me.
Uh, I will now begin with my questions. My first question is in the context of Nepal, there are different groups of minority like Dalits, Janjati, and Muslims. Among them, women's economics and social situation is worse than others. They are facing triple form of discrimination that is caste, gender, and class. Why is this so?
Thank you for the question, Purkho. I think you have somehow answered by quoting that Dalit women are facing triple forms of discrimination. That is very true.
Mhm.
Most importantly, we need to understand that being women and being minor women or being Dalit women are completely different and complex thing. We
Mhm.
shall not put women and Dalit women in same box and analyze it. I even emphasize that other minority and marginalized community has its unique history of oppression and backwardness, and that has to be defined differently as well. I also studied, I'm a sociology graduate, and as a sociologist, I believe that every society is differently constructed, and the
Mhm.
time and space has different role to construct them. For
Mhm.
an easy understanding, I think we need to use the similarities and difference approach to analyze the situation of women and marginalized women by taking some time to pause and think about their similarity and differences. While talking about the similarities, as you have known, felt, or seen that all categories of women are living under the rules and guidance of patriarchal society. Especially patriarchal leadership is still powerful in context of Asian compared to other developed countries, and some of the developed country are able to deconstruct tradition, gender relations, and its role, and most of the women are living with the negative consequences because we can see the patriarchy only nurture the male characters, or especially men, we could say men. So from patriarchal society, that is also resulted into very unequal gender relation, role, and power. So what is the difference between other women's and Dalit women?
Mhm.
Dalit women faces multiple discrimination because of the caste prejudices. That
Mhm.
caste is developed from the hierarchy, it came from the Hindu Varnashram, and
Mhm.
that caste prejudices creates the untouchability, and that also create the concept of purity and impurity, and brings various kinds of theory and stigmatization of being Dalit identity, though Dalit women did not choose this. So that is the worst part of the minor community are other category women and the women of Dalit women category. So from that region, Dalit women are historically marginalized, economically deprived, and socially and politically excluded. It is evident that Dalit women are most marginalized compared to Dalit men and subjected to the most severe forms of social exclusion and discrimination. And they are even deprived from livelihood options, education, and meaningful political participation compared to Dalit women. And other most important thing we need to understand is Nepal has a history of 100 years history, more than 100 years history of Dalit movement, even women movement in Nepal. But then there is, you know, the agenda of Dalit women is less included aid. So that is why we're still having more problem, related to Dalit women's identity and their status is not upgrade aid, and the operation of Dalit women is recreating, reproducing again and again.
Thank you very much for highlighting the basics background of Dalit women in Nepal. My next question is minority women often find it difficult to pursue a career for financial sustainability, particularly in villages or small towns. To what degree is it crucial to make positive discrimination policy to promote women in government, private sector, national and international organizations?
Yes, this is very important question. To nurture a backward community, not only about Dalit women or others, but then every backward community that also includes poor,
Mhm,
poor community as well, who do not feel belongingness to certain, national criteria or certain development status. Applying equity, diversity, and inclusion is very important. To change the exclusion status into the inclusion, positive discrimination policy is very crucial and important. Because if you see the history of marginalized women in Nepal, they are not allowed to pursue education, they did not get any chance to develop their capacity, they were engaged in traditional household chores, limiting to care and domestic work. They did not have any kind of access to the any economic resources, and they only need to support their, if we talk about the Dalit communities people, then they needed to support their parents to serve the non-Dalit community people. They were living their life as slaves for the 1,000 of years. So you know to address this historical exploitation and oppression, Nepal government even adopted reservation policies such as quota and reservation seats for minority women, Dalit, indigenous, and other minority group. But the problem is, there is strong lack of implementation. We have a policy, but then implementation part also comes together with the socialization of that implementation thing. For example, what kind of resources we create to implement that, policy. For example, if you have a policy of inclusion, but then most of the time we're evident that the Dalit community people or other minority community people do not have any economic resources to complete, certain kind of courses. They are invited to apply for a job. There is policy to engage them, but then they do not have to complete certain kind of course or complete certain kind of education, and that is creating a problem. So I was reading the paper, recently I was reading the paper written by Duflo. She talk about she very strongly argued about the point why policy is reservation policy or positive discrimination policy is important, because sometimes people do not agree with the reservation policy. Everybody doesn't, agree about that thing, and everybody doesn't accept that policy. So she kind of argued, or she did her research, and it is evident that quota system is very helpful procedure to ensure representation of disadvantaged communities or groups such as women or other ethnic minorities as well. And I think reservation is only way to represent the weaker groups. So if we see, then Dalit community or other minorities communities are very weak in terms of social, cultural, economic, and development factors. So that is very important. And if you see the example of the country who applied reservation policy, including very development countries such as UN, USA, because of the reservation policy, so many women got a chance to engage in jobs, engage in politics. So I think it is very important. In the context of Nepal, private sector doesn't implement the positive discrimination policy here in Nepal. They're free to decide their own recruitment policy. But however, government bodies in Nepal, they're acting on behalf of implementing positive discrimination. As a result, so many women or so many other minorities group that are engaged in a job and other political position as well. Also, international organizations, they are also applying, because if you see the vacancy in the context of Nepal international organizations, we can always see that people from minorities, backward communities are highly encouraged to apply. So.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Uh, my next question is due to poverty, caste, and gender discrimination, Dalit women are suffering from the trafficking, sexual harassment, and domestic violence. At this hour, recognizing the racial and caste discrimination as a serious violation of women rights is crucial. What mechanism and steps need to be taken to make these issues regional and international concern?
I think first important point we need to concern is,
Mhm,
providing their basic human rights is very important,
mhm,
because uh, doing sexual violation or trafficking is a very
mhm,
it's a greatest violation of human rights, and I
mhm,
think we need to stop that. And for that purpose, policy is very important. In first place, policy is very important. Policy to that comes with first of all, that comes with their uplifting their economic status in the first place, because why sexual trafficking is happening in the context of Nepal, because
mhm,
of poverty in the first place, because somebody who are linked with human trafficking sector, they
mhm,
often go to the villages where education are less, where
mhm,
poverty are higher. So I think we need to raise an education in the first place, and we need to uh, uplift their economic status in a second place. That is very important. And in a third place, parents also need to be educated, because they have no idea who are good persons and who are bad persons,
of
because
course.
they most of the time focus their daughters or relatives to get married, which is not important at the moment. The parents also needs to understand that. So I think these three things needs to be included to reduce that problem.
Thank you. Thank you very much for highlighting very deeply on this major issues. So now I'm moving to the next question. My next question is minority women's access to political and administrative position has been minimal. This is due to the decades all deeply rooted issues of lack of access to education and economics resource, social expectation of exclusive household responsibilities, and restricted mobility. What your recommendation to address these problems?
In the context of Nepal, to ensure gender equality in politics, political reservation was introduced. So Nepal government even law of Nepal government even mandate 33% of seats in political position.
Mhm.
However, more than 33% women are nominated in a
Mhm.
politics,
Yep.
you know.
Mhm.
But it is evident that less number of women from minor communities engaged.
Okay.
I have even, described about the,
Yeah.
similarities and differences
Yeah.
approach earlier, because we should not see women as a, woman in a whole totality to talk about the minor community, because they are
Mhm.
not engaged most of the time. So first, we need to have, a data. I believe,
Mhm.
like as government needs to collect and communicate gender data that focused
Mhm.
on minority women's number in political and administration position, and
Mhm.
we even have that numbers, but very less research have done. And
Yeah.
if we analyze the data, then a community of minority women are less
Mhm.
engaged. That's because, we have a category like as women category,
Mhm.
and we have a category of other minorities communities. And if we see, due to this patriarchal social structure and gender unequal roles,
Mhm.
most of the time, even from other minor communities, men are influential in an influential position. So I believe, like as Nepal government, you know, even try to ensure the law of inclusion. There are
Mhm.
educated policies, but we are lacking the mechanisms to implement those policies. Thus, creative plans and programs must be planned and
Mhm.
implemented. And there are also social, cultural, political, and psychological barriers and factors needs to be, analyzed more deeper level.
Mhm.
uh, and for this, we need to raise awareness in society.
Mhm.
And I believe political socialization is very important, because women are not accepted as a political being that easily. They are not accepted. They, community still believes that men are politicians, women are
Mhm.
not. So that kind of mentality also have to change, and awareness is very important. And as a worker in, for example, myself, I'm also working in the development sector. So as a
Yeah.
worker in development sector, policy reform to capacitate, empower, and strengthen individuals, political group, and institution is very important.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My next question is related to your research work. So you have also presented your research paper titled "There Are No Women as a Mayor in Kathmandu District" as a socio-political analysis of the 2017 local election in National Conference of the Contemporary Issues of Sociology of Nepal. Would you like to discuss the core ideas of this research paper, please?
Actually, Nepal became, we have a local label since previous, we have a history of local label. And in 2017, local level election happened after 20 years. And we had a local level election act that emphasized, uh, to provide 40% seats of women for 40% of seats for women, and
Okay.
50% seats in executive positions that consist mayor and deputy mayor. And what happened was, that was my thesis research time, and the election happened, and I was very excited that, there was a reservation. The policy act mandate 50% of seats for executive women, and I was very excited and expecting to,
Yeah.
mm, welcome very, number of higher number of women in executive position. But then the thing was happened was, 92% women got a position in a deputy mayor, and only 2 point something percent women got a position as a mayor. So I was very surprised with that fact, and I try to decide what is the findings of that paper. So
mhm,
what is the reason behind less nomination of women in a
mhm,
mayoral position? So that was my main research question. And what I find after my research is, if we see the history of politics in Nepal, then government of Nepal ensures 33%, and
mhm,
in local level election, more than 40% women got elected. But then
mhm,
what my question was, it was a very
mhm.
good thing that the highest number were
Okay.
women. It is
Mhm,
from 33% to 40%. It's itself a very,
mhm,
very good number, but then I do not see this every number is in a
mhm,
influential position. If you
mhm,
talk about the level of ranking and authority, very less
mhm,
women were nominated. Besides,
mhm,
40% women were nominated, but then very less position in
mhm,
executive positions or decision making positions. So my idea was to see why there are unequal
mhm,
gender relations between executive positions. So that was my main idea.
mhm. Thank you. My second last question is related to media because you are also related with media mostly. So, a conversation on Dalit issues in Nepal, Nepali media, organized by Jagran Media Center in August 2022, highlights that Dalit issues does not get proper space in Nepali media. Why is this so? How much representation does the marginalized caste groups received in the mainstream media? Could you please highlight?
Yeah, it's very true that the program by Jagran Media highlighted that fact, and actually, this is very true. And first thing I see, the reason behind this is, if we see the historical, if we again go to the history, then it's very clear that people from Dalit community
Mhm,
are very less educated because of their
mhm,
historical marginalization. They only started getting chance for education since 20 years back, or less than 10, 15 years back. So there are very less people, and
mhm,
other community, people of other community, they do not see the importance. They do not see the problem at all. If I have to say honestly, then I don't think so. Nandalit will understand, or Nandalit will see that there is a problem in the
mhm,
case of Dalit community. So they do not give space for that
mhm,
one region, and other regions are there are very less
mhm,
journalists or media persons from Dalit community itself, and that is also creating a very less space for their voices.
mhm,
And third thing is, I believe lack of knowledge as well,
mhm,
because we have some kind of information coming,
mhm,
from to to represent their ideas, but then
mhm,
sometimes the ideas coming from people who do not
mhm,
belong to the Dalit community, or who do not understand the Dalit community properly, that is creating more problems. Sometimes the idea may come, but then
mhm.
that is creating degradation of dignity rather than
Mhm.
supporting them. So
Yeah,
that is the fact I say.
thank you. My last question: what is the recommendations you would suggest for bringing peace and ensuring the safety of minorities in South Asia region?
I think we need to see this from human rights and social justice perspective. And
Mhm,
if you see the perspective from human rights, then I think our government said that all citizens are equal. But then I'm not saying that equality in terms of it's just in the paper. But then I do
mhm,
not see that there is equality in terms of their programs, in terms of their bringing them in a representation sector. That is not happening. So, in the first place, ensuring human rights of minorities community is very important. And second thing is there are lots of problem in the case of minorities communities. For example, if you see the case of Dalit community,
Mhm.
then most of the times this untouchability,
Yeah.
to untouchability things happens,
Mm,
they were discriminated, they are not even allowed to enter into the temples, you know
mhm.
as a human being, government or community needs to support them that they have rights to go
Yeah.
everywhere
Yeah.
easily. They do not deserve to feel discriminated just because of being, you know, Dalit. It's an
Mhm.
identity, but then I do not think that they deserve to being discriminated on the best of caste. I do not think so. They needs to be physically, distanced in the community, or they sometimes they even have no rights to. If they speak, then community or states even do not support them. For example, most of the times, if we see there are happening crimes just because of intercaste marriage relationship between Dalits and non-Dalits, and
Mhm.
the state is not providing security to Dalit people, because if we even complain against that murder, and we have
Mhm.
a history that Nepali, so many, murder cases not being solved. There are lots of murder happens to Dalit just because of being engaged in a marriage relationship, or just because they try to enter into the temple, just they
Mhm.
wants to use some houses to live. They are
Mhm.
being murdered or trafficked. Even we talked about trafficking situation. So first thing, the law needs to be, secure the
Mhm.
rights of the Dalit community, and they needs to implement it strongly, and they needs to have a dignity life. And law is very important, and they have some law, but then they are not able to implement, and the Dalit community do not have access to lots of economic resources. They have no idea where to go, to whom to talk, because there are very less people from Dalit community, representing in politics, representing in law sectors, representing in media sectors. So state needs to make sure that Dalit community are secure and their rights are ensured.
Thank you very much for your time and efforts. It was very great. So thank you very much. Hoping we'll see you soon again in our in upcoming events. So it is pleasure, and once again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Fukuji, for having me, and thank you so much for South Asia Research Institute for Minorities to giving me this opportunity. Yeah, I hope that we could
Pleasure.
talk more in future as well.
Sure, sure, sure. Thank you, thank you, thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Fukuji. Thank you. Bye.